gonna make a slab. So, again, I like to start with my little potato. So I need enough clay to be able to make the wall to go all the way around. I think I need a little more. I'm gonna grab some more. How much do you need? Well, you just don't know until you do it. That's the hard part. Okay, so when I'm thinking about this, how tall do I want my mug? I want it to be about this tall. So notice when I set my clay down, I'm gonna try to go ahead and flatten it out to get it to about that width. Or that height, I should say, however you want to say it. So when I look at my mug, do you see how this is slightly taller than my mug? That's what I want to start with, because I'm going to roll this back and forth this way. And so it's going to expand a little bit that way, but primarily I'm going to push the length of it. What I'm trying to create now is this wall. So if you imagine, this is just a slab that's been wrapped around this circle. So I need to make that slab now. So that's what I'm going to work on. So I'm just expanding that out a little. I'm going to use my 2 rulers, move everything out of the way, push down real hard in the middle, and I just kind of work it back and forth, back and forth. And we'll see if I got enough clay. I don't think I did. We'll see. It's going to be close. Okay. Next, I'm going to use my fettling knife, and how handy, I've already got a ruler here. I'm going to go ahead and cut a straight line that I can get to go as far as possible. This is going to be the bottom of my mug. Now, the question I ask myself, do I really want my mug to be this thick? Probably not, right? That's super thick. When I think about how thick a mug is, make that comparison, right? So this is just a starting point. This is just to give me kind of a guide to say, okay, this is about where I am. This is how much clay I have. Here is where I start to have a really steady hand. You can take your rulers apart and put one ruler, make it a little bit thinner that way. I'm going to go with starting at one end and trying to keep even pressure all the way down the length. This is going to make it longer. See that air pocket that happens there? That's okay. I know that it's there now though. The reason I like to cut the bottom straight is because then I can see how even pressure that I'm pushing. If I start to see this get really wavy, I know where it's getting thick and thin. So right here it's getting a little bit thinner because see how it bulges out some? So I'm going to put less pressure when I go over that area. This is so much fun, you guys. Making slabs. Okay, so this edge stayed pretty straight. That's not too bad. So I feel like I'm pretty good on my consistency still. How tall do I want my mug? So thinking back to the heights of those mugs, I think I like the medium-sized one. So I'm going to go about 3.5. So on this bottom, I'm going to actually cut this bottom straight one more time just to make sure it's super straight. Now, here's a step people forget to do. I'm going to go to 3.5 and make a little mark right at 3.5. That's my height. I'm going to go the other end, 3.5, make my mark. That's the part people forget. They just kind of guess. I need to connect those two dots now. This way I have the same height all the way across. Take the excess off. Take the side off. So if I stand this up, I'm not going to touch it from this end because I just cut that end off, but this end I haven't yet. I want to see how thick this is currently to see if I like this thickness as a mug. That's still pretty thick, isn't it? So I need to keep kind of running that down a little bit to keep getting it a little bit thinner. But you can see the concept, right? So this will end up coming around our base and we'll be able to cut it and bam, we've got a mug, okay? So now it's just a matter of getting it the thickness that I want. I also know that I want it a little bit thinner on the lip side, the part that I drink out of. So when I put pressure this time, I'm actually going to kind of angle my rolling pin. I know that might be hard to see, but I'm going to keep it higher on this side and lower on this side. So I'm going to push more with my right hand as I roll this. Just making this a little bit thinner. Okay, now it's time to put it on our base. The idea of this, I'm not worried about cutting this other end because every time I grab it, I'm stretching this. So that's why I try not to handle the other side as much, pinching it. I'm going to take it and set it on the base itself. I'm going to wrap this around. I'm going to turn off the cleanup alarm. And when I'm making the mug, notice how fast a slab mug comes together. This is where I definitely like to work from above so that I can really see that I'm staying symmetrical. I also like to make the slab mug first because I feel like I can make the coil mug match the slab easier than I can to make the slab match the coil. All right, I like this. I've got a nice cylinder. So now where the two pieces meet, I'm going to cut through them both at the same time. So that way I get a nice junction right there where they meet. The nice thing about this too, this is where I'm going to put my handle in the end because this is going to be such a weird edge here, and I'll kind of tip it so you can see it. No matter how I do this, it's going to be hard to get that perfect. So that's where I'll hide and I'll put my handle. To combine this, last step, I'm always going to score, which means to scratch. So I'm going to scratch this entire surface where those two need to meet. And I'm going to add slip. And slip for this, I'm just going to use one little finger dipped in water, and I'm going to run it up and down that seam. Most important is this inside hand to put pressure to keep this together. And I'll do the same thing down the inside. Now, one last thing in construction. All the way around the inside in here, I need to run a small coil. Otherwise, bacteria gets caught in that little crack in there, and it's terrible. So I just take a little coil. I'm going to roll that back and forth. And it's really, I want to make a really small coil. Itty bitty, smaller than a pencil. And this is the hard part to get in there. You might want to use a modeling tool, which is one of those wooden tools if you can't get your finger in there. But I drop this in, and I use any sort of tool that I can to get this to wed right into that corner. And I make sure it goes all the way around. The less you handle this, the better, because every time you grab this, you're going to kind of deform those edges. So I'm going to use the handle, because it's nice and round. I'm going to start to press it in. Can you see that at all on the screen? Or am I blocking it all? Okay. So I'm pressing it into the bottom. Then I'm going to press it up into the sides. And I'm just doing this little bit so you can see it. But notice how now it has a nice smooth place where the wall meets the base. Please don't forget to do that step. Finally, I'm going to pick this up, which I would never do this otherwise, but I want you to be able to see it with the camera. There's going to be a little seam here. I take just a little finger of water, and notice how I can start to smear that together. I do this with it sitting tall and flat, but because I'm trying to show you on the camera, that's why I picked it up. Notice, basically in a day, I can make a mug, right? This is your first step.